What if I told you, America's favorite TV mom just dropped a nuclear truth bomb that could blow up your entire childhood? Yeah, I'm talking about Phylicia Rashad, sweet, wise, perfectly pressed Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show. And, according to her, Bill America's dad Cosby didn't just serve pudding pops. He served up a murder plot. You heard me. Murder, as in, no coming back for the season finale murder. And the alleged target, not some Hollywood rival, not a shady producer, but Malcolm Jamal Warner, Theo, his own TV son. Why? What could possibly make the man who sold us sweaters and life lessons allegedly plan the ultimate betrayal? And why is no one in Hollywood talking about it? Grab your coffee, or your wine, or heck, just grab the popcorn because this isn't your typical behind-the-scenes gossip. This is a spiraling rabbit hole of alleged cover-ups, missing tapes, anonymous threats, and the kind of accidental death that makes you side-eye every official police report you've ever read. Stay right here, because once you hear what Phylicia claims went down, you'll never watch The Cosby Show the same way again. Alright, so let's set the scene. Late 1980s. Early 90s. America is glued to their TV screens, soaking up every second of The Cosby Show. Bill Cosby is basically TV royalty. The sweaters, the dad jokes, the life lessons that made you feel like you were actually part of the Huxtable family. And in that family, Phylicia Rashad was the rock, Claire Huxtable, the unshakable, intelligent, take-no-nonsense mother figure. Off-screen, she was equally respected, classy, private, the kind of celebrity who never courted scandal. But here's where things get unsettling. According to Phylicia, that warm, wholesome set was not all laughter and light. She says there was tension, cold stares, whispers that stopped when she walked into the room, and most disturbingly, signs that Cosby's relationship with Malcolm Jamal Warner, his on-screen son Theo, was not as fatherly as the cameras made. It looked in her alleged private notes, which, by the way, mysteriously surfaced in an anonymous email to a so-called truth blog. She described moments when Malcolm would show up to rehearsals looking shaken. Sometimes he'd have visible scratches on his arms. He'd brush them off as just clumsy. But Phylicia wasn't buying it. She allegedly overheard one heated exchange in Cosby's dressing room, where Malcolm's voice cracked with fear. "I'm done," he said. "I'm not playing your game anymore." The door slammed. Cosby emerged, minutes later with that same calm, camera-ready smile, like nothing happened. But here's the part that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Not long after that argument, Malcolm reportedly confided in Phylicia that he was thinking of leaving the show early. And he claimed Cosby told him, jokingly, in that half-laughing voice, "People who walk away from me don't last long." Fast forward a few years after the show's end, Malcolm heads to Costa Rica for a so-called wellness retreat. Yoga, beaches, detox, smoothies, the works. Except, 3 days in, reports say he accidentally drowned during a solo swim. The official story, a tragic accident, no foul play suspected. Case closed, but Phylicia, she wasn't convinced. She says Malcolm had been training for a triathlon. He was a strong swimmer, and more importantly, she claims he called her just 48 hours before the accident, saying he felt like someone was following him. His exact words, according to her, were, "If anything happens to me, it's not an accident." Now, think about that. The local police report, sloppy, no toxicology test, no photographs of the scene. The only witness was a hotel guest who just happened to be on the same private beach and who checked out the very next day, leaving no forwarding address. Here's where it goes full conspiracy. Malcolm always carried a weathered black leather backpack. It had his journal, his laptop, and according to Phylicia, a folder he'd been compiling for months. He called it his insurance. After his death, the backpack was nowhere to be found. The hotel said it was never logged by housekeeping. The police said maybe it washed out to sea. But leaked internal hotel emails, which an anonymous whistleblower later sent to a gossip site, show a very different story. One email, sent the morning after Malcolm's death, reads, "Item retrieved from 404, delivered to contact in Philadelphia. No records. Philadelphia Cosby's home base." Coincidence? When Phylicia tried to get security footage from the hotel, she was told the cameras covering the beach entrance had been under maintenance for a week. But guess what? A maintenance log from that same period, again leaked anonymously, shows the cameras had been fully operational. And here's the kicker. One entry reads, "Per request, loop feed recorded over, who requests security footage to be overwritten, in the middle of an active death investigation." 3 weeks after Malcolm's funeral, Phylicia says she got an unmarked envelope in her mailbox. Inside, a single VHS tape. On it, grainy footage of her walking to her car. At the end, a distorted voice says, "Your little story ends here." No return address, no fingerprints. Just a chilling reminder that someone was watching her every move. From that point on, she claims, things started spiraling. Unfamiliar cars, parked outside her home for hours, anonymous phone calls that hung up the second she answered. Even her sister received an email from a burner account, warning, "Tell her to drop it." This is where it jumps from creepy to outright Hollywood scandal. According to an insider who spoke on Background to a small independent podcast, there was a meeting at NBC just days after Malcolm's death. Present network executives, Cosby's legal team, and APR crisis manager. The alleged agenda contained narrative, limit exposure, protect brand. The source claims there was even discussion of offering Phylicia a lucrative consulting deal to keep her silent. She refused. Instead, she started quietly compiling every scrap of information she could find. Emails, voicemails, copies of the maintenance logs, and most crucially, her own detailed recollections of conversations with Malcolm in the weeks leading up to his death. And just when you think this can't get any stranger, Ice Cube's name pops up. Why? Well, apparently Malcolm had been in talks to collaborate on a project with Cube's production company. But a former assistant claims she overheard Cube getting a call from someone in Philly, warning him to keep Warner off the radar. Days later, Cube allegedly left a voicemail on Malcolm's phone that simply said, "Be careful, man, they're watching." That voicemail, deleted from Malcolm's phone records after his death. In 2023, Phylicia finally sat down for a podcast interview and told her story well, as much as she could without naming names. But she hinted heavily, and she used one phrase that caught fire online. #DONT, call it an accident. Within 24 hours, the hashtag was trending. TikTok sleuths started digging up old photos, interviews, and behind-the-scenes footage from The Cosby Show. Reddit threads exploded with theories. And one user claiming to be a retired NBC cameraman dropped a bombshell. "I saw things on that set you wouldn't believe. Malcolm knew too much." The momentum was building. The whispers were turning into shouts. And somewhere in the middle of it all, an anonymous email landed in Phylicia's inbox. The subject line, "You're right." Inside was a single attachment, a blurry still frame of a man who looked a lot like Cosby, standing on a beach in Costa Rica. Was it real? Was it doctored? No one could prove it. But for Phylicia, it was enough to keep digging. And that's when the pushback turned violent, because the moment she took her evidence to someone she thought she could trust, everything went from whispers and shadows to smashed windows, late-night break-ins, and one terrifying encounter that nearly shut her up for good. The first real escalation happened on a Tuesday night. Phylicia had just wrapped a low-key theater rehearsal and was heading home. She noticed a silver sedan trailing her for several blocks. At first, she chalked it up to coincidence, big city traffic, right? But when she made a random turn down a side street, the sedan followed. She pulled into a gas station, stayed in the car, and waited. The sedan parked across the street. The driver never got out. When she finally pulled away, it followed again until she crossed into a busier part of town, at which point it just vanished. That night, she found her front door slightly ajar. Nothing appeared stolen, but her desk drawers had been rifled through, and a single sheet of paper was left in the middle of her living room floor. No words, just a photo of Malcolm smiling on set, and an X drawn across his face in red marker. She didn't call the police. She already knew how that would go. A polite officer, a generic report, maybe even a subtle warning about not stirring things up. Instead, she called the one person she trusted, a retired journalist named Ray Delgado, who had covered Hollywood scandals in the 90s and was now basically living off the grid. Ray listened, took notes, and then dropped a sentence that hit her like a punch. "You're not paranoid. They're just sloppy this time." According to Ray, these intimidation tactics were textbook. Small invasions of privacy to let you know you're being watched. "It's not about hurting you," he said. "It's about making you scared enough to stop digging." But Phylicia wasn't stopping. She handed over copies of the leaked hotel emails, the maintenance logs, and a few handwritten pages of Malcolm's notes she'd photocopied years earlier. Ray promised to dig, but warned her that people in Philly with deep pockets didn't like loose ends. A week later, the first crack in the silence appeared. Ray called with news. A source from the Costa Rica hotel had finally spoken. Not on record, of course, but the man claimed he'd been ordered to clean up a section of the beach at 5 a.m. the morning after Malcolm's death. The source said he found a man's watch gold engraved with the initials MJW, and was told to hand it over to a guest representative from the US. That watch has never been seen again. Meanwhile, social media was doing what it does best, digging up everything from ancient interviews to unflattering, candid photos. A TikTok account with over 500,000 followers posted side-by-side images of Cosby from the 80s and the blurry still frame of the man on the Costa Rica beach. The resemblance was uncanny enough to make the comments section explode. Then came the voicemail. Late one night, Phylicia's cell phone rang from an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. When she played it back, it was just heavy breathing for several seconds, followed by a single sentence in a deep, deliberate voice. "They'll believe him over you." She forwarded the message to Ray, who ran it through a voice filter. The audio was distorted, but Ray swore the cadence sounded eerily familiar, like someone trained in performance. By this point, the story was leaking into fringe news blogs. One site ran a headline screaming, "Claire Huxtable exposes dark Cosby cover-up," complete with a collage of old Cosby Show cast photos and a silhouette of a man in handcuffs. It was clickbait gold, but the comments revealed something deeper. Former crew members hinting that the family wasn't as picture-perfect as it seemed. One anonymous comment claimed that Malcolm had been secretly recording private conversations on set. Insurance in case things got ugly. Another said they remembered Cosby making offhand jokes about writing Theo off permanently. Of course, without evidence, it was all hearsay. But hearsay has a way of snowballing online, and suddenly people were demanding answers. That's when the pressure turned physical. One morning, Phylicia's car windows were smashed in her driveway. Nothing taken, nothing broken, except the glass and a note on the driver's seat that read, "Drop the tape." She had no idea what tape they meant until Ray called her. Panicked. Apparently, his home office had been broken into. While he was out, his laptop was gone. But nothing else. Except, in his mailbox, there was a single VHS tape in a padded envelope. No label, no return address. When Ray found a player and popped it in, the footage was unsettling. Shaky handheld video of a beach at night. A figure, backlit by a fire, was pacing near the water. You couldn't see his face, but you could hear his voice, low, deliberate, and laughing between sentences. Ray swore the laugh was Cosby's. At the end of the tape, the camera zoomed in on a black leather backpack sitting on the sand, the same one Malcolm carried everywhere. Then static. Ray wanted to go public with the tape immediately, but Phylicia hesitated. Without clear facial recognition, the blowback could be massive. "They'll crush us in court," she told him still. Word of the tape leaked. Someone on a private conspiracy forum claimed to have seen the backpack footage and offered to pay $50,000 for a copy. Within hours, Ray's phone started lighting up with unknown numbers. That weekend, Ray's mailbox was torched. Phylicia took that as a sign. The message was no longer subtle. It was a warning written in fire. And then, just when it seemed like the story might burn itself out, an old NBC staffer slid into her DMIs with 4 words. "I was at the meeting." They claimed they had minutes from the network's post-incident gathering, the one meant to contain the narrative. And those minutes allegedly contained a direct reference to limiting the liability exposure from any direct involvement in Costa Rica. If true, that was the closest thing to a smoking gun she'd seen. But getting those documents came with a condition. She'd have to meet the source in person, in a public place, and leave her phone at home. The meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon in a crowded downtown cafe. Phylicia arrived early, scanned the room, and spotted a man in a baseball cap sitting in the back. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were 6 typed pages, stamped confidential, detailing the meeting's attendees, talking points, and a line item that made her blood run cold. Cost assessment for resolution of Warner issue. $125,000. Before she could ask a single question, the man glanced over her shoulder and muttered, "They're here." She turned, and 2 large men in dark suits were walking toward the table. They closed in with the kind of casual confidence that said they weren't afraid of witnesses. One of them, tall, with a shaved head, gave a polite but firm smile. The kind that tells you, "We can either do this quietly, or we can make a scene." The man in the baseball cap stood, muttered something under his breath, and slipped out the side door without looking back. Phylicia tried to follow, but the taller suit stepped in her path. "Ms. Rashad," he said, like he was greeting a dinner guest, "we need to have a word about those documents you've acquired." Her first instinct was to stall. "What documents?" she said, trying to sound offended. The shorter man chuckled. "Not the warm kind, the kind you hear before bad news drops, the ones that never should have left the NBC vault. You're playing in the wrong sandbox." Then, almost casually, he slipped a folded slip of paper into her coat pocket. "Read that later," he said, before both men turned and left the cafe without ordering a thing. When she finally pulled out the note in her car, her stomach sank. It was a single sentence in block letters. "One more move and you're next." She called Ray immediately. His voice was tense. "We're past the point of no return now. Either we go public or we go underground." But before they could decide, the story took another twist. This time, courtesy of the internet. Someone had leaked a grainy cell phone recording of the VHS tape Ray found. It wasn't perfect, shot off a TV screen, sound warbling, but it was enough to set the online conspiracy machine into overdrive. Hashtags like #TheoTruth and #CosbyCoverUp started trending on Twitter. YouTubers began breaking down the tape frame by frame, claiming to see hidden clues in the background from a shadowy, second figure to what looked like a briefcase half buried in the sand. Within 48 hours, a petition demanding a full federal investigation had 200,000 signatures. That's when the mainstream media finally dipped its toes in. A primetime news host ran a 3-minute segment on the bizarre online theory, linking Bill Cosby to his former co-star's untimely death. They laughed it off as internet hysteria, but still played the blurred video on loop. And just like that, the dam broke. More whispers started surfacing. A hotel bartender who claimed he served Cosby a drink in Costa Rica the night before the incident. A security contractor who remembered being paid in cash to disable beach cameras for maintenance. Even a flight attendant who swore she saw Malcolm arguing with a famous TV dad in first class weeks earlier. The trouble was, none of them would go on record. Too risky, too much to lose. Then came the letter. It arrived in Ray's mailbox. No stamp, no postmark, just hand-delivered. Inside was a single Polaroid photo, Phylicia, on stage, at a recent event, snapped from the audience. On the back, in black ink, it read, "Back off. Last warning." Ray took it as proof they were being watched constantly. Phylicia took it as fuel. "If they're this desperate to shut me up," she told him, "it's because they know I'm telling the truth." The next move was risky. Leak the NBC documents anonymously. Ray scanned them, blurred the names, and sent them to 3 separate whistleblower forums. Within hours, screenshots were everywhere. That line-item cost assessment for resolution of Warner issue became the centerpiece of 1,000 Reddit threads. Some called it proof. Others called it coincidence. But either way, it was out. And then, something neither of them expected happened. A former NBC executive actually broke silence. On a late-night podcast, the host asked about the Cosby-Warner thing, half-jokingly. The exec laughed nervously, paused and said, "Let's just say, there were conversations about damage control. And some of those conversations weren't. Let's call them ethical." The clip went viral overnight. From there, it was chaos. Tabloids splashed Cosby hit plot across their front pages. Talk shows debated whether Phylicia was a truth-teller or a bitter ex-colleague chasing attention. Cosby's camp issued a terse statement calling the allegations ridiculous, fabrications from irrelevant individuals. But instead of dying down, the story mutated. People started connecting it to other unsolved Hollywood tragedies. TikTok sleuths linked Malcolm's death to a string of accidents involving sitcom stars from the 80s. Even bigger, an anonymous post claimed there was a second tape hidden in a safe deposit box in Philadelphia. By this point, Phylicia was getting recognized on the street again, not as Claire Huxtable, but as that actress who's taking on Cosby. Some strangers thanked her, others hissed insults. Then one night, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. No words, just a single image, a map of Philadelphia. With an address pinned, Ray insisted they go. The address led to a rundown storage facility on the outskirts of the city. Inside, a rusted safe deposit box sat on a shelf, its lock already broken. Inside was a mini DV tape in a cracked plastic case. They found an old camcorder at a thrift store, hooked it up, and hit play. Hooked it up, and hit play. The footage began just like the first tape. A dark beach, the sound of waves. But this time, the camera got closer to the figure. You still couldn't see his face clearly, until a sudden flare from the fire lit it up for a split second, but it was enough. Ray froze the frame. They both stared. The sweater, the posture, the smirk. It was Bill Cosby, and in the background, barely audible over the waves, was a voice saying, "Make sure he doesn't leave tomorrow." The tape ended. Ray sat back. "We leaked this," he said, "and there's no putting the genie back in the bottle." Phylicia didn't hesitate. "Then let's break the bottle." The next day, the second tape hit the internet. Within hours, news outlets were running emergency specials. The FBI announced they were reviewing new evidence related to Malcolm's death. Protesters gathered outside NBC headquarters holding signs that read "Justice for Theo and Cosby Knew." Whether the truth would ever be proven in court didn't matter anymore. The public had made up its mind, and Phylicia, she'd gone from America's mom to America's most dangerous whistleblower. So, now you've seen it. You've heard the claims. You've followed the trail from nostalgic sitcom smiles to grainy VHS nightmares and mysterious beachside whispers. Question is, what do you believe? Is Phylicia Rashad a fearless truth-teller who just risked everything to pull back the curtain on one of Hollywood's darkest secrets? Or is this just another case of internet hysteria where half-baked theories snowball into facts because they feel true? And let's not pretend this is just about one man, one show, or one scandal. If what we've seen is even half real, it's a flashing neon sign that the entertainment industry we grew up idolizing might be running on secrets, silences, and a whole lot of cash under the table. So here's my challenge to you. Rewind your own memory tapes. Think about every accident, every career-ending decision, every sudden disappearance that Hollywood brushed under the rug. How many of those would look different if you had the receipts? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't hold back. Tell me, do you think the tapes are real? Was Theo really the target of a murder plot? And most importantly, who's covering for who? Hit that like button if you think sunlight is the best disinfectant. Smash subscribe if you want more of these deep dives the networks are too scared to touch. And ring that bell, because trust me, the next coincidence we uncover, you're going to want to hear it first. Until then, keep your eyes open, your popcorn ready, and your sweaters far, far away from Bill Cosby.